Would I be correct in assuming that when you speak of anxiety, you don't think of it as a symptom to be removed, but rather as a gateway for exploration into the meaning of life?
Yes. Well, you got that exactly right. Now, I think anxiety is associated with creativity. When you're in a situation of anxiety, you can, of course, run away from it, and that's certainly not constructive. Or you can take a few pills to get you over it, or cocaine, or whatever else you may take.
You could meditate.
Well, you could meditate, but I think none of those things, including meditation, which I happen to believe in, but none of those paths lead you to creative activity. What anxiety means is it's as though the world is knocking at your door, and you need to create, you need to make something, you need to do something. And I think anxiety thus is for people who have found their own heart and their own souls. For them it is a stimulus toward creativity, toward courage. It's what makes us human beings.
I suppose much of our anxiety comes from the basic human dilemma of being mortal, of ultimately having to confront our own demise.
Yeah, we are conscious of our own selves, our own tasks, and also we know we're going to die. Man is the only creature, men, women, and children sometimes even, are the only creatures who can be aware of their death. And out of that comes normal anxiety. And when I let myself feel that, then I apply myself to new ideas, I write books, I communicate with my fellows, and in other words, the creative interchange of human personality rests upon the fact that we know we're going to die. Of that, the animals and the grass and so on knows nothing. But our knowledge of our death is what gives us a normal anxiety that says to us, make the most of these years you are alive. And that's what I've tried to do.
Another source of anxiety that you've described in your writing is our very freedom, our ability to make choices and to have to confront the consequences of those choices.
Yes, that's right. Freedom is also the mother of anxiety. If you had no freedom, you'd have no anxiety. That's why the slaves in the films are people without any expression on their faces. They have no freedom. But those of us who do have are alert, alive. We're aware that what we do matters, and that we only have about 70 or 80 or 90 years in which to do it. So why not do it and get joy out of it, rather than running away from it? I think that's a little capsule of the meaning of anxiety.
Yeah. But isn't there a little bit of a conflict between feeling anxiety and allowing oneself to be open, vulnerable to that feeling of anxiety, and then also seeking joy?
Oh, no. There's a conflict between that and what's generally called happiness, or the flat, I would speak of the meaningless forms of feeling good. I'm not against anybody feeling good or having happy hours, but joy is something different from that. Joy is the zest that you get out of using your talents, your understanding, the totality of your being for great aims. The musicians, the men who wrote music, Mozart and Beethoven and the rest of them, they always showed considerable anxiety because they were in the process of loving beauty, of feeling joy when they heard a beautiful combination of notes. Now that's the kind of feeling that goes with creativity. That's why I say the courage to create. Creation does not come out of simply what you're born with. That must be united with your courage, which both of which cause anxiety, but also great joy.
It seems that much of our modern culture, though, is an attempt to cope with this fundamental anxiety by diversions in what you've called banal pleasures.
Yeah, well, you just put your finger on the most significant aspect of modern society. And we try to avoid anxiety by getting rich, by making $100,000 when we're 21 years of age, by becoming millionaires. Now, none of those things lead to the joy, the creativity that I'm talking about. One can own the world and still be without the inner sense of pleasure, of joy, of courage, of creation. And I think our society is in the midst of a vast change. The society that began at the Renaissance now is ending. And we are seeing the results of this ending of a social period in the fact that psychotherapy has grown with such great zest. Almost every other person in California is a psychotherapist.
It seems that way.
Yes, it does. And this always happens when an age is dying. You see, the Greeks began their great age in the 7th, 6th centuries BC, and then they talked of beauty and goodness and truth, all these great things that the philosophers talked about.
Yes.
But by the 2nd century BC and 1st century BC, that had all been forgotten. The philosophers now talked about security, and they tried to help people get along with as little pain as possible. And they made mottos for human beings. Beauty and truth and goodness had been lost. Now our Renaissance began the modern age. And at the beginning of an age, there are no psychotherapists. This is taken care of by religion and by art and by beauty, by music. But at the end of an age, every age down through history has been the same. Every other person becomes a therapist because there are no ways of ministering to people in need. And they form long lines to the psychotherapist's office. I think it's a sign of the decadence of our age rather than the sign of our great intelligence.